Hi guys, in today's video I'm going to be doing a walkthrough on how I do white dog fur with water soluble coloured pencils. So the materials I used for this piece are the Caran d'Ache Supercolour, Daler-Rowney Aquafine hot press paper and a white museum pencil. So before I started this piece, I prepped my reference photo. The amount of editing needed for this piece wasn't that much, but it does vary depending on the reference photo. Some reference photos aren't that great quality, so they need a lot more editing, but this one was really nice, so I barely edited this reference photo at all. The lighting was lovely. It was mostly on a right side and it created a lovely soft contrast. I do like contrasting lighting, but it was really nice and subtle, so it had a really nice soft feel to it, so I kept that in. The main changes were I lowered her shoulders a little bit, so they weren't visible in my painting. They were just above her ear on the reference photo, so I took those out and I kind of changed the composition a bit of the piece and made it more lovely and soft. Another problem that we had with this reference photo is unfortunately her eyes weren't visible in any of the photos that the owner took, which was quite unfortunate, but in Photoshop I hand drew in my own eye where the eye would be, and I knew quite a lot about this dog's personality through the owner and client, so I managed to draw the eye based off what I knew about her personality, so I was able to capture quite a lot of her character in her eye. Now before I started the painting I decided what colours to use for this piece, and as white is never pure white, the colours that stood out most to me were blues, greys, pinks, apricots, light browns and oranges. So the greys in this set are really cool toned, and some of them are quite brown as well. So I really like using these for white fur because they are nice and cool toned. It does make them nice and soft, and it's really good for shading white fur in my opinion. Her coat is really nice and colourful, and I definitely saw that in the reference photo. There were lots of different colours in there. So the colours that I chose for this piece were, lots of apricots, pinks, blues and browns, and those are the colours that I went with when creating this piece. When it comes to the painting itself, when using water soluble coloured pencils, I have the advantage of covering a large area of the paper with a lot of colour quickly and effectively, so I create kind of a dry base of coloured pencils, just really rough marking on the paper, and then I blend that with water, and that kind of creates a really lovely soft pigmented base. It fills in all the tooth of the paper, and it's really nice and pigmented, so it's great for prepping the paper for the coloured pencil detail on top. I find that water-soluble coloured pencils blend the best for me personally because they're incredibly creamy, especially when wet, and they layer really well. I tend to find I can add as many layers on top as I want. The white is the best for layering. You can add details on top of any colour with the white pencil, so these are definitely my go-to coloured pencils that I prefer to use. And again, like I said before, when I'm creating my base, it is quite rough with a dry pencil. It doesn't need to be sharp because this layer isn't very detailed. It's just incredibly rough getting the colour down in the areas that are needed. Try and add a little bit of tone variance, so some areas will be darker than others, but it's honestly mostly about the colour at this point. With white, the colours are a lot more subtle than other coats, but they are still there, so I do like to create a base even if it is quite subtle. When I blend this layer, I do it with a damp paintbrush that I just use watercolour paintbrushes because they're nice and soft, but I use a damp one because I find if it's too wet then it lifts the pigment too much or it spreads it around and it's not very even. If I use a dry a too dry paintbrush, sorry, then it just doesn't spread at all and it doesn't blend at all. So a damp one's quite nice to get that nice kind of even spread. There are brush strokes still visible. You can try and blend those out, or I can try and blend those out, but honestly they usually get covered up with coloured pencil anyway, so I try not to focus too much on blending the base nice and smooth. If the brush strokes are still visible, that's completely fine. Once the wet base is completely dry, I will go over it with dry coloured pencils, and I still use water soluble coloured pencils for these because, as I said before, they're really nice to blend with and to layer with. Prefer these pencils, so again I'll use these, but I'll use these dry, so I won't use them with water at all this time. Instead, to blend, I'll just blend them against each other using really soft strokes and soft lines, and then they'll just kind of mix together and blend really nicely. They are really creamy. Because these layers are dry, I like to use kind of a sharper pencil for this bit, and I can get more details in. If I went over it with a paintbrush, it would kind of blur those together, so this is why I like to keep them quite dry, because it keeps those sharp points that I need for doing dog fur. And when it comes to the dry layers, this is where things start to take shape, so I usually try and focus on, okay, where's the high point of this curl and where's the dark point of this curl. Every curl is kind of a clump of hair, so it's really important to get those high points and low points in, going over and creating individual fur after that. So while I'm creating those high points and low points, I like to shade in the direction of the animal's fur. So while I do this, it kind of creates soft layers of fur every time, because if I'm shading the direction of the fur, I'm building up those different strokes, and it's really creating that illusion of depth and texture. And I will go in with a really sharp pencil at the end and kind of add little individual strands of hair, little wispy areas that kind of create, a better illusion of fur and add a lot more detail to the piece. So when I was painting the right side of her face, I did leave a couple areas where the paper didn't completely show through, so it created a very exaggerated, very bright highlight on her face, because that's where the light was coming from on the right, so I like to keep just a little bit of paper showing through, but the rest was wet blended and then detail over the top. And for her chest, again, I'm creating the shapes and curl before focusing on each individual hair, shading in the direction of the fur to create those different layers. I like to use a lot of browns for this part because it was more in the dark, so it created a really nice warm shadow under her chest. So before I end this video, I'm just going to address a couple kind of questions and comments I got regarding white on white. So what I do is I just try and look for all the colours that really stand out in the animal's fur. So I've talked about this before, which colours stood out to me on this piece. But if you are a person that kind of struggles to see those colours, what I would recommend doing is taking your photo out of the background and replacing it with a white one. So you can do this in Photoshop or any photo editing software. Just do it really rough and just kind of put your subject on a white background, and that will really kind of make all of the colours in that animal's fur pop out. So then you can select your colour palette a little bit better and easier, and hopefully that'll help you work white on white. And that is the finished piece. I hope you liked the video, I hope you liked the piece. If you liked it, please let me know like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. If you do have any tips on how to improve my content, or you have anything particular you like to see, like more different videos, more time lapses or more voiceover type videos, please let me know. I'm always trying to improve. Feel free to comment your suggestions or email me, that's fine. But yeah, thank you so much for watching.